Yeah, we discovered that we had a great way of putting out content really, really quickly because it doesn't take us too long anymore, and then we didn't make any content for like over a month because...
Video games?
You were playing Hearts of Iron 4 and I was having one of several mental breakdowns, so, you know, it's the usual sort of approach that we take.
Well, some of us have to paint some maps and stuff, Dave. That's what the game's about, okay?
But yes, we are back with a brand new track. We've decided to, you know, finally fulfill the request that we've had for ages. People have been demanding it. We kept saying, no, we can't do that yet. But finally, we've caved and we've decided to do whatever the fuck we want because fuck all of you. I'm not getting paid.
I mean, yeah, literally, you don't pay us. I mean, when if you want
we don't
to
let
offer,
you, but
if you want to offer us money, we might review things.
Says the man who has consistently demanded that we don't do a Patreon since we started. Robert, why don't you introduce this show? Because as per usual, you finished it, I think, half an hour before we started recording.
Correct.
Because you're an incompetent, so it's fresh in your memory, I suppose. Why don't you tell us about it?
Sports item circa 1974. Battling Maxo, B2, heavyweight, accompanied by his manager and handler, arrives in Maynard, Kansas for a scheduled 6-round bout. Battling Maxo is a robot, or to be exact, an android.
Definition, an automaton resembling a human being.
Only these automatons have been permitted in the ring since prize fighting was legally abolished in 1968.
This is the story of that scheduled 6-round bout.
More specifically, the story of two men, shortly to face that remorseless truth.
That no law can be passed which will abolish cruelty or desperate need.
Or, for the matter, blind animal courage. Location for the facing of said truth, a small, smoke-filled arena.
Just this side of the Twilight Zone.
Very good, Robert. Well done. You only stumbled over a few of those words.
Fuck it. Who cares? We do this live anyway, so the joke will be lost on everyone anyway.
No, we're not doing Twilight Zone. We are doing Megalo Box, or Megalo Box, or Megalo Box. However I pronounce it, someone in the comments will tell me I'm fucking wrong, so whatever.
If I remember rightly, it's actually Megalo Bokusu, but I'm pronouncing that wrong.
If we say it that way, it's mildly racist, so let's not do that.
Susan, no.
God has mercy. I don't.
We get enough shit already.
Gundam.
It's Gundam. I will never stop saying it as Gundam. You cannot stop me.
It was literally translated as that. In the words of Khrushchev, we will bury you.
Anyway, Megalo Box. This is us doing something a little bit more recent, which is slightly... I can't remember the last time we did something that happened after 2010. Maybe Samurai Flamenco?
Or it'll be Inu Shiki.
Yeah, this is probably the most recent series that we've done, but in many ways, it's a very retro-inspired series, so it feels more classic than it is in that sense, but it aired between April 2018 and June 2018, put together by those chaps over at TMS Entertainment, who are originally Tokyo Movie Shinsha, who are kind of, I think they might be the oldest, I'm not gonna say definitely, they are one of the oldest Japanese animation studios still in operation today. I'm gonna hedge my bets there, because otherwise there is gonna be someone saying, actually. But yeah, they go back all the way to the 1960s, so they have been making stuff for a very long time and are responsible for a lot of kind of the popular classics, like I think they do a lot of Lupin the Third and things like that.
There'll also be things like Detective Conan, Monster Rancher, Sonic X, I believe. They're also the people who did Inspector Gadget, as well as the New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh.
Okay, so a broad range. Is Winnie the Pooh anime?
Yeah, by the way.
Banter. I love it. Next review, Winnie the Pooh, motherfuckers.
Only if we do the Russian version, because, you know.
That's fine. I'm fine with this. We'll start with a quick overview. Rob, can you tell us a little bit about the story of Megalo Box? What is this series all about?
In the near future, robots have taken over for humans in the boxing ring. Former boxer and small-time promoter Hugh Jackman struggles to make a living with patched-up robots in shady venues. When he discovers he has an 11-year-old son who believes that a robot found in the junk heap has what it takes to win, he finds himself with a shot at the big time.
I hate how that actually works quite well as a summary.
Fuck you, that's Real Seal. The best shirt. It deserves an Oscar.
Also a very good robots and mecha kind of thing, but no, we're doing a different robots and mecha and boxing thing, Robert. An actual summary of Megalo Box, please.
Boxing, but with robots, arms.
Yes, that works.
Street fighting, but bad. Tournament, arc, boxing.
Yes. Boxing.
There ain't
robot
much plot
boxing.
here, by the way, fellas. Like
robot arm
Like
Boxing.
robot arm boxing.
Go the distance.
Go the distance. Rap song plays loudly.
Yep.
Motorbike sequences. There's a dog at least twice. This is just Ashita no Joe with robot arms.
I mean, we'll need to talk about Ashito no Joe a little bit because this is where Megalo Box has spawned from. This is kind of one of the classics of the sports manga. For the 50-year anniversary, TMS Entertainment decided that they were going to do sort of an adaptation of it. They basically decided that instead of just doing another Ashita no Joe anime...
For clarity's sake, TMS also did Ashita no Joe 2. So they own the rights to it.
They've already done it.
Yeah, they literally already done it. They did it in the 80s because Ashita no Joe was in the 70s and Ashita no Joe 2 was in 1980 to 1981.
So they've been doing sequels for a while. They realized, shit, we kind of need something different for the 50th anniversary. So they decided to make it sci-fi.
Well, the thing is they've done an anniversary show ever since the 70s because Ashita no Joe was huge.
It still is, to be fair. It's still one of the... That thing was written, I think, in the... When was Ashita no Joe? It started in 1968, finished 1973. It's still in print just now. People are still reading that. It is still massively popular.
And you cannot get it in English, which is really annoying.
Can you not?
No, there is no English official publication of Ashita no Joe. Even though it's so hugely popular that, like, I think if I remember rightly, it's sold 20 million copies.
I believe it. That's bizarre. That's like how they've only just recently translated Legend of the Galactic Heroes. Like, what are you people doing?
You gotta understand there's a lot of manga and anime only came into prominence in the West in the 90s. So, like, we're only just discovering stuff from the 70s now. And discovering big quotation marks and all that. Like, Ashita no Joe was so popular, like communist revolutionaries in Japan said it inspired them. Like, Ashita no Joe is this huge, like, working class background story. It's Rocky. That's what Ashita no Joe is. It's Rocky and Rambo combined into this story. That's awesome.
Boxing as a sport always has been a working class man's sport. It's always had associations with that. I guess we should probably talk a little bit about the plot of Megalo Box itself without, pointing out that it's just real steel. He's going as Junk Dog at the time as our main character. He is what's known as a non-citizen, so he lives outside of the big fancy city in this kind of slum region, and he's working with this rather sleazy boxing promoter and coach called Nanbu to fix matches in the local illegal fighting rings. So he's deliberately throwing matches at set cues for money.
Whilst he's wearing his super totally futuristic Bluetooth headset.
The classic. It never will go out of fashion. Bluetooth headsets will be popular for years, Robert. What are you talking about? I think Joe's problem, though, is he is someone who is aware of his own talent. He knows that he is capable of more than this, and he is kind of coming up against these barriers that are in his way. He wants to be a great boxer. He wants to prove to everyone just how capable he is, but the opportunities just aren't there for him. However, this chance encounter with Yuri, who is, as depicted in the show, the King of Kings, the greatest boxer of Japan, who has this integrated Megalo boxing suit that allows him to hit harder and faster than literally anyone else, results in this rivalry developing between them. And so Joe is able to get his manager, Nanbu, on board with this idea of climbing the ranks and throwing himself into this ultimate fighting championship. No, I'm kidding. Throwing himself into this fighting tournament that the corporation Shirato is putting together. And then it's Rocky, but with robot arms. So it's great.
The thing I don't understand, it's called Megalo Box when it should have just been called Gearless Joe. That's the one thing I don't get in this, is the naming for it was just bad.
I don't know, like Megalo Box made it stand out to me at the time. Like, I watched this when this first aired, when I wasn't nearly as familiar with older anime and manga as I am now, and I'd have seen something like Gearless Joe and been like, whereas Megalo Box immediately catches out because, it's boxing, it's like a fighting sports anime. Okay,
but so does Gearless Joe.
No, it doesn't. That's just, well, you think boxing because you know that Joe is Ashita no Joe, but if you're a pleb like me at the time, and still, I don't necessarily put two and two together. So you got to dumb it down for the morons like me.
Ashita no Joe is very specifically the Rocky story. A guy from a shit background is a bit of a fucking dirtbag, to be honest. Is a bit fucking useless and aspires to be, a professional boxer. Megalo Box is not necessarily the same, because like Junkyard Dog is a con man. He's not a good boxer, but he has potential.
They're hitting the same kind of beats, but going at it in a different way, probably because they have less time to tell this story than Ashita no Joe, which, is done over many volumes, whereas this, it's got 13 episodes to tell the full story. So they got to be a bit more precise with it, or concise rather, but yeah, same vibe. Let's see. We've introduced the studio. We should talk a little bit about the team behind this.
If I remember rightly, it is, because I may have an interview from the scriptwriters in this handy booklet I have here. This interview is from Jiro Kuna, I think his name is. He's the art director. He's written a lot about the art, but basically he's explaining like the most important thing that they did was using basically Tomorrow's Joe or Ashita no Joe. It's the backdrop for everything in it. So like everything else in the show was kind of secondary because they kind of knew where the plot was going because that was their plan. And so like their plan was just to create a new world with the same story. That's what he says about the art director.
You can tell they were taking their cues from anime and manga of yesteryear. This has a real classic feel to it, like from the art style to the music to the character designs themselves. This feels like something from the 80s or the 90s. And I'm 100% here for that because they don't make them like this anymore.
No, they don't. That's the very interesting thing with this, is like a lot of these people are all, they worked with the same director before, so it's Yui Murayama. So all these interviews with these different people, from the writers to the script writers to the art directors to the music director, they're all like, the first thing they say is like, I work with this guy on X.
They're all guys who have worked at TMS Entertainment before, but a lot of them, this is like their first big project where they're stepping into the lead roles. So Yu Moriyama, or Yao Moriyama, I'm not sure, well, I'll say Yu Moriyama. This is his first time in the director seat. He's previously worked as an animation director for Lupin the Third projects. He's done some key animation for Redline, but this is his first time in that kind of position.
Moriyama is the mechanical designer. He worked on Gungrave and High School of the Dead and Lupin the Third. And it's just like, oh, you worked on a lot of trash, and then you also worked on some good
I
stuff.
think the chief animation director as well, Shingo Ishikawa, who's also been an animation director for Berserk the Golden Age and Dragon Ball Z, but he's never been the chief animation director before. So this is a newer team, I guess you could say. But obviously, as you've pointed out, guys who've worked together before and decided to put together this project.
I think the interesting thing as well is they also worked with the previous team who worked on Tomorrow's Joe. So like a lot of the interviews in here is actually with the original team for that. It was talking about how they had lots of interviews with the new team working together to do things. So that's... check the guy's name. I should have written some of this down because it's actually really
Probably a good
freaking
idea.
good.
I didn't know you had this. You didn't tell me that you had this.
We have some absolute Kino Robert flipping through book. So it's Tetsuo Chiba, and he's the manga artist who worked on Tomorrow's Joe, Orawa Tepe, Ashita Tenki ni Nare, and Notaro Matsuro, and other stuff as well. And basically the interview is basically saying that they spoke to him, and he said, like, the way he describes it is the same blood flows through both veins, where Ashita no Joe is set post-World War II Japan. It's these people who are fighting to, you know, like, Japan after World War II had the shit bombed out of it.
Yep.
It wasn't exactly like, you know, an industrial place until the Korean War happened and they started selling arms to people. But, you know, I digress.
The Ashita no Joe, the original one, it has that same kind of feel of, you know, it's outsiders who don't have a place in society finding that place through boxing. For the writers and the screenwriters, we've got, let me butcher this name just quickly, Katsuhiko Manabe, who I don't think has done much in the way of anime writing, but he did write a Fist of the North Star film, and exactly, and Kinsaku Kojima, who I can find nothing on this man apart from the fact that everything that Manabe has worked on, he has worked on as well. So I'm presuming these two are frequent collaborators or writing partners. We have got, for character designs, Hiroshi Shimizu, who's also done character designs for Our 7-Day War, which I've never heard of, and Michiko and Hachin, which looks like one of those kind of 90s edgy modern day action things that they were doing back then, which were great and I miss. And then finally our composer is a guy who goes by the name of Mabanua, who he's mostly like a musician outside of the anime industry, but he's done some stuff. Like he did a couple songs for Space Dandy, so he has worked under Watanabe, which fits because this soundtrack is Watanabe as fuck, and I am 100% okay with that. That's all of the... It seems like it's not the biggest production team that I've seen, and again, they are all fairly new to the roles that they are performing in this production, and yet what they have managed to put together is, I think, pretty excellent. This is a series that has been made by people who know boxing. They've done the research. They have studied it as a sport, as a form of fighting. There's a very clear understanding of movement, of footwork. They really convey the sense of ring sense, sizing up your opponent, getting an idea of how they move, what their timing is. You often see boxing dismissed as like it's two guys in a ring punching the shit out of each other. And it can be that. And there are some very entertaining matches where it is just two guys knocking lumps out of each other. There's a reason why it's called the sweet science. There is a lot that goes into this. There is a lot of strategies that you can take, and they take the time in Megalo Box to show different fighters using these different methods.
It's even like the end boss is a boxer that can swap between southpaw and orthodox boxing styles, and that's depicted within the show as like he can do it like that, and it fucks with Joe's head because he's ready to fight one thing and then step of the foot and he's stepped completely different.
I think that's Yuri that fights him. That's Pepe.
Well, no, Yuri learns to do that, and by the final he's able to do that as well. Because Pepe is he not just a southpaw boxer, but he can swap slightly, and Yuri just batters shit out.
He's got that weird kind of unconventional thing where he is switching stances and switching between orthodox and southpaw quite a lot, and I think Yuri takes that on board and uses that later on. Like, they learn as they go throughout it, which is very fun, because Joe, he starts off an excellent boxer, but still not on the same level as Yuri, but then through his trials and tribulations and through him, earning the right to step into Megalonia as a competitor, has become so much more than he was, and there's that sense of respect that's building up between the two. Speaking of Pepe, so the spider or whatever they call him, I like that they give a sense of boxing being this international sport.
Do you know what the thing I love most about Megalo Box is, like, obviously you're talking there that boxing is an international sport. There's all these famous fighters that we know names of that are household names, like Tyson, Ali.
Vasyl Lomachenko is one of my favorites at the moment. Yeah, no, there's so many good names that have come out of boxing.
There's Fury, there's what's his name?
Prince Nazim. I got some serious Prince Nazim vibes from Glenn Burrows as well. Just this loud, braggadocious motherfucker coming out and
you get things
putting
like
on
Jake
a show.
LaMotta, Joe Frazier. But what they take from that element is they take that and turn it into WWE. So like,
oh man, they do as well. Yeah.
So like, Megalo Boxing becomes like, at the end of the day, Pepe the Spider may as well have been the Iron Sheik. Make you humble.
Sheik, I have brought you the greatest gift known to man. The biggest pussy in the world, and I want you to fuck it.
So it's this kind of element of, obviously, like, wrestling is Saturday morning cartoons, and if you think otherwise, you're a dumbass. But boxing is also that. It's just like, where do you think wrestling got it from?
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes a fight a fight. Like, there's the rivalry. Like, you mentioned Tyson Fury earlier. His whole, I guess, arc, you can say, recently. Like, this man who has been to the lowest depths that you can get to, rises back up, fights, what's his fucking name? Deontay Wilder. There we fucking
Wilder, he's
go.
fucking
Oh
bad,
my
cunt as well.
God. The first fight was nonsense when they scored it the way they did, but he
So
came out.
He fucking knocked someone the fuck out.
He chose violence on that day, and then
Also
he stepped into the ring and he put on a fucking boxing clinic, and Wilder was the punching bag. It was incredible. But that's the kind of story and the kind of arcs that you can get out of boxing. Like, Tyson was a mess even fucking a year beforehand, and then he comes back and pulls that off, and you can get stories like that, and that's something that Megalo Box replicates extremely well. So yeah, no, the guys who made this understand boxing and depict it in an exaggerated way, but they depict it well all the same.
Like a lot of boxing, anime, and movies, it's obviously a very exaggerated version of how boxing works. Like, some of the punches they take in this is just like, that would end a fight. Like, not just a boxing.
He'd be dead now.
He'd be dead. Whereas, like, I suppose in a way, it's a very good version of cinematic boxing. It's like if you were to box like Rocky, you'd get your fucking ass kicked in a ring. Like, it's the same with this. If you box like this, you're gonna get the shit kicked out of you. That's the same with, I suppose, Rocky as well. But Rocky's like, is it Rocky Garzano? Is that who he's based on?
Rocco Francis, Rocky Marciano. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that, but long Italian name.
Babbity boop.
Those sort of fighters tend to have not great later lives because lots of punches to the head will do that for you, whereas guys like Floyd Mayweather Jr., even though he is an older chap now, because he's a more defensive boxer, he's doing a lot better. For all it's a shonen fighting tournament anime, it's not your usual over-the-top
Don't lose your
anime. Yeah, boy. And like, don't get me wrong, I love stuff like that. I am not slagging off, Dragon Ball Z, Hunter x Hunter, any of these things that tend to go for that really, really over-the-top spectacle fighting sort of vibe. This is a lot more restrained in its approach. It's exaggerated, like the way they show the movements and the way they show Joe like ducking under someone's guard and coming in with this uppercut. It's like, your bodies don't bend that way. What is he, how is he that low to the, what? But it's selling it. It's exaggerating it to convey the suddenness or the surprise of this movement that he's making. So I'm a sucker for visual storytelling in my films and my anime and things like that. It's a visual medium. If you can bring a bit of visual storytelling, like metaphors and themes into it, you make me a very happy boy. And Megalo Box is a big fan of a couple key visual metaphors that it will keep coming back to throughout the series. It's this image of Joe, or Junk Dog, as this stray dog, like this battered and bruised and mauled survivor that is charging towards this cliff. You'll see him depicted as that constantly. Either he's on his motorbike or him as the dog itself. And that's his whole mentality and attitude, like this man seeking to prove himself to the world, even though he's come from nothing, throwing himself at seemingly impossible challenges. And they come back to that constantly, and I love that shit. Nanbu is referred to as a scorpion, and that's something that scary Yakuza guy recognizes in him. Like, you are a man who has a natural inclination to fuck others over. It's that metaphor of the scorpion and the frog that they use very well with Nanbu. Yuri is kind of Joe's opposite, so instead of this battered and bruised tailless dog, he is this large, refined white wolf that Joe is charging towards, again, representing the fact that these two are destined to clash. I like this stuff, man, and you don't need to do too much with it either. Like, it can be really simple. Like, this isn't super deep metaphors and themes going on here. It's just nice, simple, clean visual storytelling that conveys some of the themes that you're going for in an interesting way. You don't have to put too much into it, but it shows that you've gone the extra mile and put a little bit of extra thought into the story you're trying to tell, and I really appreciate it, because you don't see enough of that anymore. And how is a wanky failed film student like me supposed to get his rocks off if people aren't doing this stuff? It's very hard for us, Robert.
Don't group me in that fucking category. I always find it funny that we have this show. I was about to say I have this show. We have this show where
you don't
we
do
review
a fucking
stuff.
thing. Fuck you.
Exactly. I just do the humor. I do the bits that make it watchable.
I'd be angry if you weren't correct.
But what I'm meaning is, like, we have the show, we talked about stuff, and the whole essence of my being in this show is to stop you from being a pretentious film student. And it's really difficult sometimes, because, like, I am the pretentious film student as well. It's just I'm also like, what would be funny in this scene? Fart jokes.
We've hit on this already, but this is not a complicated story. This is simple, classic boxing underdog story. They just do it really well. Joe is going to make it. You get invested to see how he'll do it. They don't feel the need to go.
And then they don't fucking show you how he does it, because fuck you.
Well, they don't need to. Like, what he wanted, what he sought from the beginning is that fight with Yuri, who he saw as this ultimate challenge who would allow him to push his boxing further than it's ever gone before. And so that final episode, they don't need to show the finale, because both of them have got what they wanted. They have reached the destination that they sought, which is this fight.
But this is like Goku doing the spirit bomb and then launching it, and then it's cut to black, and then it's like the Sopranos fucking credits start rolling.
I really like that choice. I really like it. It's trying to give you a sense that it was never about who was going to win. It was about rivalry and respect that's developed between them.
Not about the destination. It's all about the journey. Don't lose your way. Plays loudly.
I mean, Joe, he's not a hugely complex character. He doesn't need a backstory or history. They're giving him that kind of man from nowhere style. And he's, seeking the ultimate challenge, and they work that into the plot in a way that I really vibe with. I love the way they show him in a fight. Like, he's never someone who backs down. He's this guy who clearly relishes what he's doing. He's got that cocky smile that they give him when he realizes that he's about to face someone harder than he's ever faced before. He doesn't panic. He doesn't get scared. He just gets that fucking grin on his face. Like, do you watch Muay Thai much at all, Robert?
No. Honestly, the only kind of martial arts I watch is sumo, and I'm not even joking.
Okay. There is this Muay Thai fighter called Sanchai, who I get the same kind of vibe from as Joe. Like, he's this tiny little Thai boxer who is so good at what he does. He's fighting increasingly taller and taller guys in exhibition matches. Like, he's something like 5'4" or something. Like, he's fighting dudes who are like 6 foot and punching lumps out of them. And he has that same playful, vibrant style to his fighting. And he just constantly has this shit-eating grin on his face the entire time he's in the ring, because he absolutely loves what he's doing. He's fantastic. And that's the kind of vibe that I get from Joe. Oh, there was one more positive that I wanted to mention. Aragaki. Aragaki's story is probably the highlight of the series for me. That is, like, don't get me wrong, the conclusion is great and I still enjoy it, but Aragaki's kind of plot is the peak. To explain his story quickly, Aragaki is a former soldier who was badly injured in this unnamed conflict, and he's also a former student of Nanbu's. He feels he was abandoned by Nanbu. When he came back, the gym that his former mentor was running is gone, and he couldn't find the guy anywhere because it turns out Nanbu thought that Aragaki was dead and kind of fell into a slump. So it's all quite tragic in that sense, but he kind of embraces boxing as a way of channeling his anger and his... I think they don't quite specifically state it, but it is post-traumatic stress that he is suffering from, and boxing is his way of working through that. And what I love about Aragaki as a character is, for all he's an opponent for Joe, and he's a very challenging opponent, because this is a guy who trained under Joe's current trainer, so he knows all of the shit that Joe might throw at him, but he's never quite an antagonist. I, at least, found myself kind of almost rooting for him, even though he is the man who is trying to oppose Joe going the distance, which is kind of counterintuitive to a boxing anime. I liked his character so much that that was a complicated fight for me. And I think it's also, and this is something that we don't talk about a lot. When we talk about vocal performances, we tend to be talking about like the English dubs of things. I like to single out the voice actor for Aragaki in this, Makoto Tamura, because fuck me, that man puts in some work in his performance as Aragaki. Like the scene where they have Aragaki at his lowest, and you know he's just lost his legs and he is in the pits of despair. It is fucking heart-wrenching to watch, and it is down to the performance that Tamura gives. It is incredible stuff.
I actually really enjoy the character of Nanbo the most, more so than because Aragaki is this, he's an important character and all that, but Nanbo is the driving force of the plot, shall we say.
He does bring a lot of the plot, it's true. Like, he's this morally complex, and you're never entirely sure if he's fully on Joe's side or if he has a further scheme that he is planning. And usually the answer is, yeah, he's got a further scheme up his sleeve. And so it's always adding a certain dynamism to the plots, which is why I don't always agree with the criticism that I've seen where it's like, oh, it's just Joe getting in a ring with a guy and fighting him. It's like, you're selling it short there, mate. There's a lot more going on.
I suppose that's the thing, is that if you do reductionism of anything, Samurai Flamenco is the plot of a man who stops the bad dudes.
Yeah, it's reductionist bullshit, that sort of attitude. And since we're talking about like kind of the classic vibe of it as well, we should probably mention, like we've talked about the art style a couple times. Like, this looks like something that came out in the 1980s or the 1990s. Like, this looks like Cowboy Bebop or Samurai Champloo, something that Manglobe was doing back in the day. It doesn't feel like the stuff that's coming out now. Like, Joe doesn't look like generic white bread fucking protagonist number 507. He's actually got some character about him. I mean, he's a bit of a pretty boy, but he's got, the scars and the big mop of hair that looks like something Spike Spiegel would have on a bad hair day.
Basically, yeah.
It's a cool style. I wish they made more stuff like this these days.
Well, guess what, Dave?
Yeah, they are.
Well, we normally go on to talk about negatives, and the other thing I've got to say is I don't really think there is any. What I'm meaning by that is the show is an anniversary of Ishida no Joe. It's a boxing anime. It updates it for a modern audience by adding in modern stuff like CGI animation. But
It's a little bit. But
I don't think any of it's actually bad, quotation marks. There's some bits of it that's weak, but I wouldn't say it was a negative.
it never quite gets to the point where it's actively ruined anything for me. Like, I have a couple issues that I'll get into in a moment, but yeah, I would agree with you in that for all it has its issues, they're not so overwhelming that they detract from the qualities of the show otherwise. They had, in my view, a perfect opportunity to set up an antagonist, though, and I think they kind of arsed it a little bit. And this is my biases here. I grew up reading a lot of cyberpunk and dystopian fiction, so I think that faceless, amoral...
being gay.
William Gibson is a Chad, and I will fight all who disagree.
Okay, Dave, I'm going to give you an argument here. Are you ready for this, right?
Go and hit me with your argument.
Season 2.
Yeah, maybe they'll do it, but I don't know. I feel like this series could have done with some sort of overarching antagonist, and they had the perfect opportunity with that, with the mega corporation in Shirato, and that would have worked as well, because like a faceless, amoral mega corporation, really good counter to a story where it's about individual determination and force of will, and one guy trying to beat the odds and go the distance. And there's several moments where Shirato is shown to have kind of engaged in out and out villainous shenanigans. Like they had Saicho's father killed to steal his research, and yet I still don't feel like there's any point where the corporation properly becomes the bad guy. Like that whole Saicho's father being murdered is more used.
Maybe season 2.
I don't know. I don't think they're going to go into it with season 2.
I hope they don't. I hope
Yeah.
it's just like
I'd like a
the
clean
Megalovania 2.
Yeah, boy.
Megalovania theme plays.
And that murder is still it's more for Yukiko Shirato, who's like, she's Yuri's sponsor, and it's more to kind of give her a bit more emotional depth. And even that is like, yeah, that's fine, but she's a pretty tertiary character, I guess. I feel like that was a wasted opportunity. You could have used that to set up an overarching antagonist that Joe was coming up against constantly. Saicho's brings up that his father was actually bumped off by the corporation. That doesn't get brought up until like episode 9, episode 10.
And it goes fucking nowhere.
Yeah, it's introduced too late and it doesn't go anywhere. And it feels like such a wasted opportunity.
You say wasted opportunity, but like literally it doesn't matter to the plot.
No, or the plot where they're implying that Shirato is using the Megalonia tournament to market this integrated gear to the military. Again, they use that to give Yukiko some ethical hang-ups about what her company is doing, but it has absolutely no impact on Joe and Yuri's story, which is kind of what the show is all about. And they could have used that as well. Like Yuri, he rejects the integrated gear because he wants to fight Joe on his terms, on the same equal footing. That works, but they could have also used him discovering that the integrated gear is being sold to the military, and he could have rejected it on the principle that he's not a fan of, the sport, that he's dedicated his life to being reduced to a market. He's in a wheelchair, dude. He's not doing anything in season 2.
Literally, Aragaki has robot legs, Dave. Season 2.
You've got me there.
Come on, Dave. You're like, your negatives are like, they didn't do this. And it's like, yeah, okay, that's cool and all. But season 2.
I want a clean break in season 2. I want season 2 to be kind of like Joe's later career. And that kind of feels like what they're going for if you've watched the trailer. Like this is several years later. Joe is not looking great. I think he's hallucinating Nanbu as well. And
awesome.
Yeah. It's going to be fun. Honestly, all the complaints that I do have about the first season of Megalo Box, it's more just that there were opportunities that they didn't take, and I would have liked to have seen them take them. That being said, what they do is still fucking great.
Season.
I'm going to throw something. Yeah, which brings us nicely to the conclusion, which we've probably already covered several times already because, good lord, we are bad at this. Robert, give me some parting thoughts on Megalo Box.
Please watch the show. It's good. Season 2 coming soon. Please sponsor us, all the anime, for your release of Megalo Box 1.
The main reason why I wanted to get this video done now is because next month in April 2021, we are going to be getting season 2 of
Dave, did you just
Megalo
date our
Box.
first video? Oh shit.
Yep, it's kind of obvious. What is quite exciting about season 2 is that basically the entire cast and crew is returning. all the same talent,
Yep.
all the same names. This is a promising fucking sign. Parting thoughts wise, this is a great watch if you're looking for something maybe not super challenging, but something quite comfy and quite engaging and very, very visually impressive with a great soundtrack. It's a fuck of a lot of fun. It's technically mecha because they have robot arms, so we're allowed to cover it.
Twin
And-
Peaks is technically mecha because of that sliding like curtains. So I think this will.
What? What? No?
Yeah. There's those curtains that have like the oil and the cotton buds. That's mecha.
No.
Okay,
Stop.
explain to me how the mechanical action of a curtain is not mecha.
Is it a robot or being performed by a robot?
I said mecha, which means mechanical.
No.
All I'm saying, right?
You're wrong.
Doctor
Stop.
Who
Shut
counts
up.
as mecha, which according to some people on the internet does.
Some people on the internet think that Evangelion 1 doesn't count as mecha and 2 is a deconstruction of mecha. Some people on the internet need to shut the fuck up. Probably us
Dave.
included. But
Well, you got to understand that We Heart Giant Robots is a deconstruction of anime review shows. In the
I
fact that we
am
review-
deleting the channel.